Welkom terug. Nou, ons het 'n baie interessante gesprek wat ons nou gaan voer met Dr. Yvonne Holt. Nou, sy is die mediese hoof van Next Bioscience en Netcells stemcells bank. En ons kyk spesifiek volgende oor koord-bloedselle en die skenking daarvan. Good morning, Dr. Yvonne.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. This is a very interesting topic, and I don't think a topic a lot of people know a lot about. So I want to start with a very simplistic question of what is cord blood?
So umbilical cord blood is the blood that is in the placenta when a newborn baby is born. Cord blood contains important stem cells that are blood-forming stem cells. This cord blood is rich in these blood-forming stem cells that are used to regenerate bone marrow. So I think most people have heard of a bone marrow transplant.
Yep.
And essentially that is the transplant of stem cells within the bone marrow from one person to another. Now, scientists discovered that cord blood is rich in these same stem cells that can regenerate a bone marrow. So it is used for to treat diseases that affect the bone marrow. So your blood cancers, leukemia, lymphoma, your inherited blood disorders like sickle cell anemia and thalassemia, and then also certain immune disorders and metabolic diseases. These are all life-threatening illnesses that require a bone marrow transplantation to treat the patient.
Do stem cells from cord blood then have more benefits than the stem cell from bone marrow, or is it different?
It's actually pretty much the same. The reason why scientists looked at cord blood stem cells was that they were so easy to collect. The cord blood is collected, as I said, at the birth of the baby. Once the baby is born, they cut the umbilical cord and hand the baby either to the mother or the pediatric nurse. And then the doctor will drain the blood from the placenta into a blood bag, similar to when you donate blood. A needle is put into the umbilical cord and the blood drains into a blood bag. So they similar stem cells. They do the same job as stem cells that you get from a bone marrow, but they're just much easier to collect. Getting bone marrow from a bone marrow donor is a little bit more complicated.
If you decide to, okay, I'm going to use the blood from the umbilical cord from my baby, how long do you have? Is it like hours? Is it minutes that they have to extract the blood?
Yeah, it is basically minutes after the birth. The minute the baby is born and that cord is cut, then the blood has to be collected immediately. And most gynecologists in South Africa are familiar with the procedure. We've been in existence for the past 17 years, so and South Africans have been collecting cord blood over this time, so a lot of gynecologists, particularly in the private sector, are familiar with that procedure. And it only takes a few minutes. It doesn't interfere with the mother or baby at all.
I think a lot of parents might be nervous just because we're always nervous about things we don't know or don't necessarily understand. Is there something that parents should consider, or what advice would you give to parents before they make a decision like this?
So basically, we would like to create awareness that this technology exists in South Africa. And the considerations for parents is that if there is a family history of any blood-related disorders or cancers, it is wise to store your child's stem cells for use for that child or other siblings in the family. It's essentially, it is an insurance policy. The diseases that it treats are rare. They are not that common. So it is basically an insurance policy that you store those stem cells for your child.
Dr. Yvonne, why would you say is it important in a South African context to widen that pool of cord blood stem cells?
So in South Africa, we have a very small donor pool for bone marrow. The South African Bone Marrow Registry runs the donor registry in South Africa, and the number of donors is small. The majority are Caucasian donors. Donors of different African ethnicities are slowly increasing, but it is certainly not representative of our population in South Africa. So a lot of awareness has to be created, and we always ask people to come forward to be bone marrow donors in South Africa. Another aspect is we would like to create a public cord blood bank. Currently, there are only private banks in South Africa that people have to pay to store their baby's cord blood. If we could have a public cord blood bank where people just donate at the birth of their babies, they obviously then relinquish ownership of this cord blood, and it goes into the registry to be available to the community at large. But unfortunately, sorry.
No, my apologies. I do want to ask you, listening to you, this is such an important topic and it can literally save lives. Why do you then think it is that government has taken so long to get on board?
Well, I just think, as I said, the diseases that it treats are rare. And government has other health priorities that are more pressing at the moment. And, you know, South Africa, we don't have endless funds to do everything that we want to do. So I think the government has a big burden on, you know, maintaining our health standards in South Africa. And as you know, they are struggling with that.
So is it then a very expensive exercise as a parent, as a mother, for me to do?
I would say it is. The costs are about 25,000 Rand to store your baby's cord blood for a period of 20 years. And the tricky part is that young people having a child, you know, are it's a struggle financially. Just having a child and getting ready for the child, and so to fork out that amount of money in the beginning is difficult for a lot of people, a lot of South Africans.
Doctor, you said that at this stage you have to pay and there's no necessarily public bank where we can help the whole community, yet this is something that can really save lives when it comes to diseases that we don't often come across. So really is a specialized thing that we actually need. How easy, for example, is it then to get a bone marrow transplant?
So it's not that easy. We have to, if you need a bone marrow transplant, you would contact, or the hospital would contact the South African Bone Marrow Registry, who would then search for a donor. And, you know, you have about a 1 in 100,000 chance of finding a donor, a match. Particularly, as I said, if you're of any African ethnic descent, because there isn't a large pool of donors. Say Caucasians, if I can compare, in South Africa we have about 65,000 donors, whereas in Germany you have 1 million donors.
Wow.
So that is the disparity. A public cord blood bank would be great. It's easy to donate. It would be easy to collect cord blood. You know, you create a public bank that then can be used on the in the community.
Absolutely. Dr. Yvonne, just after this break, I want to get more into that public bank and how we can use it to our advantage and maybe, you know, create awareness around a public bank. So we'll speak after the news. Goeiemôre, as jy nou net ingeskakel het, jy's ingeskakel by Groot Ontbyt en ons praat vanoggend met Dr. Yvonne Holt. Nou, sy is die mediese hoof van Netcells en Netcells Stemcell Bank. En ons kyk spesifiek oor koord-bloedselle en die skenking daarvan. Dr. Yvonne, before the break, we were starting to speak about community cord blood banks. So what is the difference between a community cord blood bank and a private cord blood bank and the benefits of a community one?
So a private cord blood bank, parents bank specifically for their family. There is a fee and the cord blood is stored exclusively for that child and that family. A public cord blood bank is one that people donate to. It is government funded and government run. And people donate freely at the birth of their child, but then they relinquish any exclusivity or ownership of that cord blood to the public bank so that it can be used for the community at large.
Now in South Africa, we only have private ones when it comes to this. And we've touched on the fact that, you know, a community one is so much needed because it really benefits so many people, especially with illnesses. So it really is something that we strive towards. But what is that process that you have to follow when you're looking at cord blood banking?
So for individuals in South Africa, what we have done, just to elaborate on the public side, we have been working with government, and various academic bodies have also been working to set up a public cord blood bank. But it isn't happening at the moment. So what Next Biosciences as a company, we have joined with the South African Bone Marrow Registry and set up what we call a community bank. So it's not a full public bank, and it's cheaper than a private bank. What we offer is parents for a lower fee to store their baby's cord blood. But that cord blood unit is also put on the registry so that it is available to the community as a whole. And if a patient needs that cord blood, the family is then approached to donate that cord blood unit, and they are refunded all the money that they put in the beginning. So it's kind of a hybrid model. This kind of hybrid model exists in Spain at the moment, and we've adopted that model and set that up in South Africa, just as a step towards a public bank.
Doctor, I can imagine then that in certain cultures or circles, there might be some myths when it comes to donating the cord blood. Some parents feeling like, I can't give my child's blood to help someone. Are there any myths that you would like to address today?
So absolutely, there are various cultural ideas about what should happen to the placenta and the cord blood after the birth of the baby. Some people want the whole placenta to bury. Some people want a part of the cord to bury or keep until the child is a certain age. And all those things are essentially possible. It's really just the blood that we want to store. So I think, despite certain cultural beliefs, I do think it's more about awareness and education around what cord blood is, what it can do to treat. that can overcome any cultural obstacles to doing this.
Absolutely. How many cord blood stem cell transplants have been done in the world, and what is the success rate?
So about 40 to 50,000 rand, sorry, 40 to 50,000 cord bloods have been transplanted around the world. The number may even be more now. During COVID, a lot of the stats were not recorded accurately, I think, because the world was just embedded in COVID. So I think there have been more done now, and the success rate is good. You know, no doctor or medical institution would go down the road of offering this, you know, if it didn't work. So definitely for bone marrow transplantation, the cord blood has been successful, particularly in children.
Wow.
Particularly in children, and so yes, it has been successful. There is a lot of work being done with stem cells and cord blood stem cells to treat other diseases that require regeneration of things like the nervous system. So in cerebral palsy, there has been for the past 10 or 15 years, I think, a trial in the US to treat cerebral palsy with cord blood.
Wow.
And a couple of patients, our clients, have taken the cord blood that they've stored and had these transplants done in the US, and have had certainly results from that, where cerebral palsy children, they have intellectual and physical disabilities, and those have certainly improved after a cord blood transplant.
Wow.
But those things are still experimental. Nevertheless, in the future, you know, things may develop as medical science develops.
Dr. Yvonne, thank you so much for joining us and educating us about cord blood stem cells and how it also can be used and the process that we can follow. We really appreciate you joining us this morning.
It is such a pleasure, and I do apologize not speaking Afrikaans, that I couldn't explain all these medical terms in Afrikaans, but thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much. Dis natuurlik Dr. Yvonne Holt en sy is hoof van die Next Bioscience en Netcells stemsel bank en ons het nou gepraat natuurlik oor daai koord-bloedselle.